This year's Canyon ISD Football Show is being brought to you by Nichole Thompson of State Farm. She's located in Amarillo. Now, she used to be the Hereford title sponsor, but then she moved to Amarillo, so she has taken over as the Canyon ISD title sponsor, and we do appreciate her being title sponsor of a show here again on the S2S Sports Network. Now, if you need insurance and you're out in Amarillo or around Amarillo, Nichole Thompson is who you want to talk to. She's located at 4722 Southwestern Street, Suite C in Amarillo. You can give her a call at 806-391-1033. Her mobile is 806-881-7881. Office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. After hours by appointment. Of course, it's State Farm, so you know if you have an emergency, she will be there for you. You can also find her online at www.nicholethompson.com. You can also find her on Facebook. Just type in Nichole Thompson State Farm in the search. Now, we all know in these times finding something affordable is such a big deal, but having a good agent is just as important too. And the great thing is with State Farm, you can have both. You can have a great agent like Nichole who's going to help you do things like bundle your auto and home or your auto and a motorcycle or a boat. She's an agent that will guide you through all that and help you make the right decision on which coverages are perfect for you. You don't have to worry about the hassle. You don't have to worry about all the headaches. Nichole is going to take care of that. So again, price is important. Affordability is important. But having a good agent is just as important. And the great thing is with her, you have both. And we do appreciate her for being a title sponsor of the Canyon ISD Football Show here in 2023. Canyon ISD goes 3-0 and a couple of defensive battles. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett here on the Nichole Thompson State Farm Canyon ISD Football Show right here on S2S Sports, part of L4 Media. As you saw, all three Canyon schools go get a win. I should say. I almost said go winless for some reason. Two of them were defensive battles, which is kind of interesting. We'll talk about that. Also, Canyon West has a huge game this week as they're going to be taking on Lubbock Estacado. They're actually taking on them today as I'm recording this very, very early on Thursday morning. It's an early matchup, and Grant Goodwin and I will talk about it on Sideline to Sideline, and I'll play that here on this. That way you can also kind of get to know what Sideline to Sideline, our 4A show, is all about. But first, let's take a look back at last week, and we'll start with Canyon West as they kind of got in a surprisingly defensive battle as they beat Paladuro 14-7. Reed Macon threw for 179 yards, but it was that ground game. Jordy Hernandez, the senior, had 159 yards on the ground and a touchdown. King Talent also had a touchdown on the ground. And, you know, this was a defensive game because Paladuro did a good job of kind of controlling Macon and Talent through the air. Talent only had 29 yards and 6 catches. So they did a good job of, once he caught the ball, tackling him. And that's where he is such a beast. It's not just like the deep routes. It's the little screens. And he makes one move and gone. And they did a good job of shutting that down, but you got to give this defense credit. They limited to Paladuro to 30 plays in the whole game. Paladuro did not score till the third quarter. West Plains scored their 2 touchdowns in the first quarter. And so the Wolves, they go to 3-1 with the win. And again, good to see a defensive battle, to be honest with you. You know, up until this point, and we even talk about it on the sideline segment about the play, you know, that West Plains defense got torched against Bushland, and hey, it's Bushland. There's no shame in that. And since then, it's played pretty well. And so, you know, good win for them, and it's good to see that they could play a pure defensive game if they needed to. Speaking of Canyon, they were in a defensive game as they beat Caprock 17-0 as the Eagles get the shutout to go to 3-0 on the year. The defense held Caprock to 4 first downs. 4 in the whole game. 72 total yards, 71 passing yards. Offensively for Canyon, Sam Johnson ran for 64 yards. Colt Cruz ran for 53 yards. Boston Bell threw for 197 yards and an interception. Leading receiver Jacob Burris, 5 catches, 70 yards. Scoring on the night for Canyon, as they were the only ones that scored. David Harper kicked a 30-yard field goal in the first quarter. Colt Cruth had a touchdown in the second, and then Sam Johnson had a touchdown in the third. And again, just a very dominant defensive showdown and a really good bounce back game for Canyon after giving up 48 to West Plains. And, and they also gave up 34 to Perryton. And so good to see that the defense is trying to figure things out. They're going to play Greenwood, a team that has struggled this year to win, but can score. That it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think Canyon will be able to name their score, and that's why I think they'll win. But the Rangers, man, they're 0-4. They're really, really young. And on the year, in their losses, they've scored 51, 28, and 28. And so it's a team that can score. That was the big thing that they had this year. Their issues defensively, they have to replace pretty much all their key defensive guys. But Dylan Dominguez is a really, really good running back. They have a really good wide receiver in Cade Rowlett. This is one of those games that if Canyon doesn't watch out, it could kind of sneak up on them. I don't think it will. I think Canyon will win by a pretty comfortable score. Last year this was a 7-point game. Was it 28-21, 21-14, something like that? This year, I think Canyon will be able to score into the 40s, and I could see them winning, 50-35. Comfortable, but Greenwood can keep it interesting, for a little bit. Canyon Randall's game wasn't quite a shutout. It was a low-scoring game, in my opinion, when you think about today's football, but it was a great game as they hold off Wichita Falls 30-28. Randall jumped out to a pretty big lead. Daniel Ray had 2 touchdowns in the first quarter alone. He ended up finishing with 187 yards on 18 carries. And the Raiders, they just absolutely destroy Wichita Falls in that first half. And it looks like it's, they're going to be able to coast to a win. But then Wichita Falls gets 2 touchdowns in the third, including a scoop and score. And that, go into the fourth quarter and it's 30-28. And then neither team could score, and so Randall is able to hold on. A good win. Now, Wichita Falls has kind of started off slow compared to where I think a lot of people thought they would be. They're 0-4 on the year, but when you look at their scores and who they've played, of course, they started against Wichita Falls Rider, that very emotional last game between the two schools. Before they consolidate, and they lost. But then they lost to Hereford, and at first you're like, wow, they got beat by Hereford. But, hey, Hereford started out really, really strong, which is so funny because Nichole Thompson, who's the sponsor of this show, was the sponsor of the Hereford show last year when her offices were there, and Hereford was terrible. And Grant Goodwin and I had to talk about an 0-10. I think they won one game. Or maybe they did. I don't even remember now. But, yeah, I had to talk about them week after week after week. We're so appreciative that she moved and kept a sponsorship, and now we can do Canyon and get to talk 3 teams and 3 teams that are starting out pretty good. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Wichita Falls also lost to Plainview 27-10, and then to Randall last week. So, I don't know what to make of the game for Randall when you look at, who they've played. And honestly, you're not going to really know anything until 2 weeks from now when they play Canadian in the last non-district game. I've seen Canadian, went and watched them play Bushland, and oh man, that they are a machine. That possible rematch between Canadian and Gunter would be the 7th in the last 8 years in the playoffs. That's going to be amazing if that happens. But for the Randall, that'll be their first true test game. They get Amarillo Paladuro this week, and Paladuro maybe can out-depth them, but it didn't help them against West Plains, and I don't really think it's going to help them against Randall. I think it'll be a close game. I think Randall will win, but I think it'll, be a 34-28 type game, 35-28. Maybe not quite that on defense, just because Randall so far has only given up 28 as a high. And I do think Wichita Falls is better offensively than Paladuro. So maybe more like 28-7. I'll change it up a little bit there and go 28-7. I do think, though, that Canyon ISD is going to have a really, really successful week again this week. We're getting close to district. West Plains has 2 more games in the season. In the non-district, they've got Estacado here and then Hereford. And then they'll start district play October 6th against Seminole. Canyon will start district play the 13th against Hereford. Interesting, man. I don't know how real that white-faced team is this year. When you look at 3-4A and Canyon and Randall, and right now it's I would say it's Canyon, Randall, and Hereford all 1A, 1B, 1C. Dumas is probably going to get that fourth spot. It'll be between them and Pampa. I know Dumas is really down, but I still think they're probably a little bit better than Pampa, whose only win this year is against Big Spring. Dumas is 1-3 as well, and their only win is against Perryton. They lost to Plainview. They lost to Estacado. They lost to Cooper. And Dumas, you knew they were going to be down this year after last year's squad, after actually really the last 4 years. When you look at what they did from 2019, and they started out strong last year, but then they kind of had injuries and stuff. And then this year, you just knew having to completely rebuild that offense and defense was going to be a struggle for them. So in 3-4A Division I, the two canyons are going to make the playoffs. It's just where are they going to be? And that big matchup, let's see, when is the Randall Canyon matchup? That one will be October 20th, so second to the last week. All right, so Canyon West this week takes on Lubbock Estacado, and Grant Goodwin and I of Sideline to Sideline. We had that as one of our matchups to watch this week. Each week, Grant and I talk 4A football. We also talk 3A and 2A. You can find us at s2sgrantandterry.com or on all podcast platforms or on YouTube at L4 Media. We do a video of the show. But anyway, each week we do a review where we talk about last week's actions and we talk about this week's actions. And this Thursday's matchup between West Plains and Estacado was one of our preview matchups. And here is what we had to say about it. Canyon, West Plains, the Wolves. They take on Lubbock Estacado. I think this is going to be
going to be a dandy.
I have a feeling this would have been a game we jumped out to because this is about that time of year we like to go see maybe a couple teams we kind of had off the radar.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is going to be a dandy. Lubbock Estacado, man, they have kind of announced themselves as back with their depth this year and their talent and what they're doing to teams. Now they're not beating the best of the best, but I mean, these are the same teams they usually play in non-district every year, and there's 4-0 outscoring opponents by an average of like 52-14. But they're taking on a Canyons West Plain team that I still feel that they still feel that they probably should have beat Bushland to begin things, and since then they've been rolling against the same teams, mind you. These two teams play a lot of the same teams. I like this matchup. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I think West Plains is going to push this Estacado defense. You know, West Plains quarterback Reed Macon has thrown for about 1,100 yards so far this year, and then he's got a really good receiver in Jordy Hernandez. But West Plains may be struggling a little bit on defense. I mean, they did give up 47 to a really good Bushland offense, right?
Yeah.
But Estacado and DJ Johnson at quarterback, dual threat quarterback, Bobby Ross, one of the best running backs up in that part of the state, and then Cedric Ross at receiver. This Estacado offense is for real.
Yeah, it's very for real. Again, Estacado's, it's always been, even when they've had good defenses, it's playing good defense in key moments. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a perfect little primer game before district play gets started for them to see how they respond. Because I think this is going to be the best offense they've played so far this year.
All right, who you got? I got Estacado.
I got Estacado. I think Estacado's just a little bit bigger, a little bit more athletic. I'm curious, though. You know, West Plains, last year, this was the game that they kind of announced themselves because they upset Estacado, and they went from being 0-3, and then they went on that winning streak until they lost to Seminole and District. So we both feel that Estacado is just a little bit better. I've kind of actually gone back and forth on this one. I really like both of these teams. I think both of these teams are going to make some noise in the playoffs. I think this is going to be a hell of a game. I do like Estacado still, but I think it's going to be super, super close. You know, this game was close for most of the game last year, and then West Plains scored a couple touchdowns to make it 35-14. And we talked about, I can't remember if it's in that cut or not, but we talked about that was kind of the game that, you know, they kind of announced themselves. Yeah, they had beat Paladuro 28-26. But then they beat Estacado, and it was, you know, they went on that 3-game winning streak. And that's when you kind of realize that, hey, this West Plains teams might be a little bit ahead of the schedule. And you see where they're at now. And I think this is a good comeback 2 game. I just think that Lubbock's just a little, Estacado is just a little bit better. And again, you can hear Grant and I each and every week talk 4A football. We also talk 3A. We also talk 2A. You can find us on Facebook. Just type in Sideline to Sideline, on Twitter at Grant and Terry. And we do appreciate if you do tune in. Also on YouTube at L4 Media. But it's going to be another fun week of football. A couple more weeks till district. If you're going out to the games, be safe in your travels. Cheer the teams. And remember, it's all for fun. Let's not take it all too seriously. Until next time, I'm Terry Bennett. And this has been the Nichole Thompson of State Farm Canyon ISD Football Show on S2S Sports Network, part of L4 Media.